And we also have, if you have questions on uh, home warranty stuff. So we have Lisa Wood here today and got the camera working, volume's working, seems like everything's working, right?
Yay. And
All
sorry, I
right,
had to
perfect.
jump. Sorry, wasn't right on. I had to reload my Zoom. Unfortunately, I do not have my PowerPoint. We're having a little bit of issues, so it's not on here, but I just would like to talk. And if anybody has questions, if that's something that can happen, but really just want to talk about home warranty.
Okay.
So, Lisa Wood, First American Home Warranty, and I have been with First American for 24 years. Have done a lot of home warranty, home warranty claims. Um, it's funny, about 98% of my job is actually taking care of the home warranty claims. I talk to your homeowners. I teach them on things that they think they know, but they don't know. So really, I'm just going to do a really quick best practices, really understanding what home warranty is. I get questions from not only my real estate agents, but also from the homeowners. We home warranty starts at the close of escrow. We do have a seller's policy, and I can talk about that in a little bit. For a year, it goes a whole year. It can be renewed. Home warranty, I basically said it basically is taking care of the inner workings of the home. We do cover pools, but plumbing, electrical, uh, appliances, HVAC systems, water heaters, roofs, if you have the roof coverage, pools. And then we have things like well pumps and septic tanks. So, really, that's what we do. Homeowners insurance, say that the homeowner comes home, they have a pipe that's leaking in their wall, floods their house. We come in, open up the wall, fix the pipe, close the wall, but all the water damage is a homeowner's insurance. So that's a little bit the difference between us. And I get probably asked that question once a week still. So home warranty, homeowner's insurance. Um, I did say that we do have a seller's policy. Right now, it's becoming a little bit more popular. You can put a home warranty on the property during the listing period up until when it closes escrow. It is not paid for until it closes escrow. It falls out of escrow, you don't pay anything. And it's unlimited. We can't do pools or roofs, but we can do the plumbing, electrical, HVAC systems. It's sometimes agents are like, this property, it's older, it maybe has not been maintained, and chances of something happening during the listing period might be great. And the seller really has no money to put into any type of repairs or replacements, if that's the case. So it's a per day. It's about single family home, about $1.80 a day, and then paid at the close of escrow. I've had agents that put that on every listing. They actually will pay for it. That's something that they like to offer their sellers. So that is one thing. So we do have before and then after. Um, Really, how home warranty does work too. We do want everything in good, safe working condition at the close of escrow. And I've had it. I've had it where, maybe the dishwasher might have a big rusted hole in the bottom of it, and that wouldn't be covered. We really want everything to be working. Do things break 12 hours after they close escrow? Absolutely. My number one that I get, homeowner closes escrow. They call out the gas and electric company just to check. I want to check my gas cooktop, my gas oven, water heater, furnace. So they'll come out, they'll check everything. And I had one 3 weeks ago before I went out of town. They actually had the furnace. They wanted everything checked. Well, the furnace had a crack in the heat exchanger, which means that the furnace will be condemned by the gas and electric company. We come in, we say, yep, it does need to be replaced. Well, we don't know when that crack happened. We don't know if it happened 9 hours after they closed escrow or 9 months ago. It was not called out in the home inspection. We have to replace the furnace. We don't know when that happened. So that's where I see things happening pretty much right after the close. So we have to be there to take care of that client. Um, One of my other, what I see is real estate professionals. Familiar yourself, get familiar about whatever home warranty company you're using. Kind of know what the coverages are, what the property is that you're going to be writing on the RPA. This is a single family home. It has a pool. If you have a question regarding how much should I put in the RPA, I get text messages all weekend long. I do answer my phone. Hey, Lisa, they'll send me a Zillow ad. Hey, look at this. How much should I put in for the home warranty? I don't want you writing a check out of your own pocket because there wasn't enough money put in there, and it does happen a lot. If it can, if it conveys with a property, please cover it. That one item that you don't cover is the item that's, might break. Refrigerators, washer dryers, just make sure you have enough money in the contract and that you cover. And again, please give me a call, text me. I'm here to help you before you have to write that in the RPA. The other big thing that's happening now where I live, there's 10 houses on my street. Right now, 4 ADUs are being built right now, and there's only 10 houses. We do cover ADUs, guest houses. That is another thing you are going to want to reach out to me because it, depending if it's attached to the property, does it have its own entrance, square feet, what's in there? Please reach out if you want to cover that ADU or guest house. And one other, order the correct property type. We cover single family homes, condos, townhomes, ADUs, houses up to 10,000 square feet. And I have a lot of those in my territory. When the house goes over 5,000 feet, the home warranty costs, it's a lot more expensive because we will cover multiple systems, multiple furnaces, HVAC systems, refrigerators, washer dryers. So reach out if you have a house that's over 5,000 feet. I would also like to be able to email a link to our contract. I would be happy to get that to you. And if any of you do have homes that are over 5,000 feet, I have a cheat sheet that I can send you. And kind of the last little thing I really wanted to say really quick before if there's any questions is consider a 2-year home warranty. In the coolant has been, the coolant that's out right now is no longer being produced. And the AC systems, um, the new AC systems, the HVAC companies have stockpiled these the old HVAC systems and the old coolant. When they're gone, the new coolant is going to have to be used in these new systems. Something we found out in about 3 months ago, we went and we were taught an HVAC class. If they have to put in the new AC system, say it's a Lennar and it does not have the matching manufacturer of the furnace, we will have to replace the furnace as well. They have to be matching. So there's going to be a lot of out-of-pocket cost to the homeowner. We will cover the furnace, but there will be modifications. So consider, especially if there's an older AC system, furnace, consider a 2-year. We do have a discount that we can add. And that's kind of it in a nutshell without having to go into a super deep dive into this, but I would be happy to answer any questions, emails, texts, however you would like to talk to me.
Yep. So I'm glad you brought up the seller's home warranty because that gets overlooked a lot, or they just don't even know that it's
A
there.
lot.
And that is
Correct.
a really good little reassurance. And I like that you brought it up that some agents just pay for it because we're talking, $30 for a month. So, a small
Exactly. Yeah.
thing. Things come up when you list a property. I've had homes have plumbing issues. I had a listing where we were two weeks in escrow and the upstairs flooded out and caved in. And I know that's not home warranty stuff. The plumbing fixture did fail, but the rest of it obviously was on insurance to correct. But things happen, and it's a little bit of peace of mind for the little things that could go wrong. So.
That's
And then also there, if you can open up the chat, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Thank you for coming on. There's a few people that had some questions
I
in
will
there.
definitely answer.
Oh,
Yes. I have to
okay.
see where. Okay.
Yes.
Oh, I love this one. For solar, correct? Right now,
Mhm.
the home warranty, yeah. Would you want me just to reply to them or just,
We can do the solar one, yeah.
yeah. The solar one, I get that asked all the time. Home warranty companies are not covering solar right now. I think the case is because the solar companies are coming and going, and there will be a point, believe me, in November, we're getting together as the entire country, and I bring this up a lot. I want to cover the solar, but at this point, the home warranty companies are staying away from solar.
Okay. And there was one
Yeah.
other one, and then two people were asking about prices, if you want to maybe toss a link in there or get to those. But the other one was, what happens if we have water damage that is being handled through our homeowner's insurance, but the plumbing
Mhm.
repair itself is not covered? Would the home
Happens all
warranty
the time.
have
Go
covered
ahead.
that
I'm sorry.
situation? Yeah.
Yes, I have. This happened to me about 6 months ago. Homeowner moved in, and all of a sudden they'd been in there a few months. They walked into their kitchen, and their kitchen floor was really nice and warm. Well, that's not good. They have a
Right.
hot water slab, so they had damage. So what we did is that the max for that, she has an upgraded plan, was $2,500. She used that $2,500, paid basically part of her deductible for her homeowner's insurance, and they covered everything. The pipe, they had to reroute the pipe. They did not want to fix that pipe. Home warranties do not cover reroutes. We cover digging down and fixing the pipe. So she took the $2,500, rerouted, and then went through her homeowner's insurance. We will fix whatever plumbing issue there is. The secondary damage isn't covered by the home warranty, any home warranty
Okay.
company. Yep. And I will put a link to with our brochure that does, it's a 15 page, it goes over all the coverages and the pricing really quick. One thing I do want you to look at, and we'll put it in the chat, is the codes, mods, and more upgrade. Always, please, throw that in. It's $100 more. It covers, it's going to take care of that client if we have to replace AC, furnace, or water heater. And I also have discounts I can throw your way. I have a $25 and a $50 discount. If you're a little short, just reach out to me and I can help you just to bring it down a little bit. But I will put that in the chat.
Awesome. Well, thanks for
Thank
coming
you.
on and chatting with
Thank you.
us about home
Absolutely.
warranty stuff. So,
Definitely.
all right, cool. Well, I'm going to go ahead and get started, and
Thank
then
you.
she's going to throw the link to the brochure in the chat. So if you have questions on the pricing and everything, because that really depends on all the add-ons and everything else. So, and then
Yes.
also
And
if
I'll
you
have
can
my
throw
email
your yeah,
my contact
contact.
information.
Okay, all
Absolutely.
right,
I'll send that. Travis, thank you
cool.
so much for
All right,
having me on today. All
all
righty.
right. Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
We'll see you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
All right, I'm going to reshare my screen. Okay, so if you're joining a little late, today a couple weeks back, I asked, topics, what are you guys looking to hear about? One of them was short sales. The other was selling homes fast. I am not going over selling homes fast today. However, next week we are going to have Jeff Lobb on, who is the owner of Coach 52. He's a national real estate coach and speaker. He speaks a lot at like Inman and things like that. He's going to be on talking about the market and building business and different things like that. So it'll be a great time if you have some questions about some of that. We will also cover that topic later on too, but he will be on next week if you want to come on. So that should be a good one. Um, Today I'm going over two things. One is obviously the sales volume drought. I'm sure you're seeing all the headlines about the volume of sales happening and things like that. A lot of people are saying, "Oh, market crash," and all this, and we've been hearing that for probably a couple years now. Um, and then also we're going to go over short sales, just a little bit. Not it's not a full-on training on the short sales, but we will go over it, and I can answer some questions on that because they are somewhat tied to each other. So what I'm doing today is kind of comparing 2008, the uh, the housing crisis, the crash, all of that, and where we're at today. So I see with our attendees, we have some agents here who have been in the business as long or longer than me. I got licensed in 2003. I started my career in Las Vegas. So I went through the nice boom, did really well then. And then, yes, the market crashed, and that was one of the worst markets in the US for the crash. And to give you an inclination of how much uh, how bad it was out there. Prices slid in Vegas in some of the markets out there, some of the areas, about three-quarters of value from the peak. So a $200,000 home was going for about 50K. It was pretty crazy. There was um, so much inventory in the peak, right before the crash. I remember looking at MLS and we were looking at just about 2,000 listings in the whole Las Vegas Valley, which was roughly about 2 million people at the time. And in the worst part, right around 2010 to 12, there was well over 30,000 listings out there. I think it got up to almost 40,000. It was just crazy. And it was a tough market. And um, right now is a tough market as well, but it's a different tough market. And so that's kind of why I wanted to make these comparisons. So, for those of you that have been in the market a long time, if you want to raise your hand and pipe in, just let me know. I can unmute you. Or if you want to throw down some scenarios into the chat as well, just so everybody can kind of learn, where we're at, what you're seeing. Let me know if you think the market's crashing. Um, yeah, Raina's been licensed since 1998. So let's go ahead and get started. So. Yes, this isn't 2008. Yes, the volume is similar. The volume of sales happening is similar, but it is completely different. So again, there was a lot of news, financial news last week, or I'm sure we're going to hear even more this week. And then, all the groups were, moving over to, oh, the housing crash is coming and all this stuff. And, I think, well, nobody can predict the future. This is a different scenario we're in. Um, so I went and pulled some actual numbers from the '08 crash and put them next to today's numbers. And, you know, what you're seeing in headlines or at least group chatter and stuff like that is the comparison is not the same. It's not apples to apples. So in 2008, the crash was a credit crisis, which then became a housing crisis. The driver was forced selling millions of people in loans they could not afford, resetting into payments they couldn't make with no equity to sell, uh, to give them the ability to sell. So nearly every piece of that scenario is missing today. And here's what the numbers show. So if we're looking at 2010, which was the peak of the crisis, there were 2.87 million properties with a foreclosure filing on them. And while, yes, we have experienced a few foreclosures recently, the numbers are starkly different. So in 2025, the filings were at 87% below the 2000 peak at just 0.37 million. Um, this number has not changed that much, even to today. So, I mean, this is, the difference is very stark. So foreclosure filings hit a record 2.8, well, almost 2.9 million properties in 2010. In 2025, filings were reported at about 367,000. So that's down 87% from the peak. Yes, 2025 was up 14% from 2024, and quarter one of this year, 2026, filings ran about 26% above quarter one of 2025. So yes, that direction is worth watching, but the comparison is not even close to what we experienced in 2008 and 2010. So if you look at the foreclosure rate, Um, Again, 2008, 1.4, uh, 2010, 2.23. I mean, we're over here, we're sitting at 0.26%. So it's very, very, very low still. Um, Measured as a share of all housing units, which is the apples to apples version, foreclosures peaked at 2.23% in 2010. In 2025, they were 0.26. So that's about a ninth of the crisis rate. Um, it's still well below where we were in 2019, even before the pandemic distorted everything. So another major difference right now that we have to be very mindful of is one, we have a lot of people who are in great mortgages. They have equity and they have a great rate. And, that's been part of the reason why we're in this position now is sellers aren't, we don't have the move up, move down happening too much because they're locked in. We have that lock-in effect going. So share of mortgaged homeowners underwater in 2012, which was still in that crisis peak, there was 31% of homeowners were underwater on their mortgage. As of mid 2026, we have about 813,000 homeowners that are underwater on their mortgage. So uh, considerably different scenario. Um, but are prices declining? In some areas, yes, we are seeing price adjustments. We're seeing longer market times. We're seeing people selling under list price, things like that. So yes, I anticipate this number still could go up in certain regions. Other regions are holding strong though. So let's see, where do we want to go from here? Short sales as a share of all home sales. Again, vastly, vastly different. We were looking at about 9%. It seemed like, if you're in that market, it seems like every single thing you were doing was a short sale back then, and it was terrible. It was just not fun. It was tough on the home buyers. Um, there were a lot of investors out at that time, so I talked about it maybe a couple months ago about adding investors into your target audience, and because they are still buying, they like to buy obviously as low as possible, and so they do. There's still a significant portion of the home buyers out there right now. So short sale growth rate accelerating 3 years running. So this is I don't know if you want to call it getting worse, I guess. So from 2023 to 24 was up 4%. 2024 to 2025 was up 10%. Q1 of 2025 to Q1 of 2026, so we're taking a year there, but only the Q1s, was up 16%. So that the number is growing a little bit, and I am seeing more of these come on the market and more from our team listing them or asking what they are and how do we deal with these kind of first time buyer buy them, things like that. So we'll cover that in a little bit. So the growth is real and accelerating. This is something, it's a very small market segment, but it is something we should uh, watch the numbers on because it can be indicative of prices sliding a little bit more. And that's what happened. That's what I saw in 2008 as that crisis just uh, kept going on. And there was so much inventory that the prices just were getting chopped, 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 chopped. So every time a home sold, it sold less than the last one, which then drug the comps down a little bit, which then made all the rest of the people in the neighborhood be a little less or a little more underwater potentially, or they had a little less equity in their home. So it is. kind of compound that fat that it makes the comps go down, the value of the homes go down a bit in the neighborhoods, which does make it a little tougher for the people who have some equity. Maybe they have this price in their head. Um, so we always want to make sure we're getting ahead of the curve when we're pricing those. Um, let's see here. So here is, I like this one. So the growth is real and accelerating up. So from Well, we just went over that. Sorry. Next one. Months of supply, the opposite problem. So in the peak, we had about 11 months, 11 and a half months of supply, so almost a year. What does that mean? It means that if no new homes listed, it would take 11 and a half months to sell everything that was in inventory. That would be if zero homes listed. So that was in the peak. A balanced market is 5 to 6 months of inventory, months of supply. Right now, we're sitting at about 4.6 as of July 2026. So we're getting towards that balanced market, and I'm sure we're all feeling it, where, buyers have some leverage, some negotiating room. It's actually been kind of nice. If you're on the listing side, it's been a little challenging because, we've had such a run up, after the crisis kind of went away and we got back on track with the housing, and then we had our little, crazy time right after COVID, where everything just skyrocketed. Sellers are used to multiple offers and getting what they want and not giving anything and no concessions and all this stuff. Well, we're getting to that point now where we really need to have those conversations early with them to set them straight because we are pretty much in a balanced market. We are real close to being in a balanced market right now. So 2008 was a supply glut. I mean, there was just so many homes on the market. We don't really have that. We're still short. We're still in a shortage. We're getting to the point where we're almost not, but we're still in a shortage right now. So that's another major difference. Um, so loan quality and why forced sell isn't coming. Um, so we had a ton of subprime. We had these negative amortization loans. They were called pick your pay loans. There was just so much loose underwriting, I guess I'll call it. There was a lot of mortgage fraud. Everybody was trying to get a house, right before the housing crisis, and there was a ton of really, really bad loans, loans that people shouldn't have gotten, essentially, and that definitely contributed a lot towards the crisis. I mean, that was one of the things that kind of kickstarted it. So. Um, that was a subprime market. Now, in my opinion, we still have subprime loans. They've just been repackaged, but they still have ability to repay guidelines, different things like that are safeguards for homeowners so they don't get into a loan that will cause them to default later on. So over 90% of outstanding U.S. mortgages are a fixed rate loan. And that's why I was saying, we have a lot of homeowners they're in those 2 and 3 and 4% loans. They got a 30-year on them, or maybe even less, maybe 15 or 20 they refied into, and they're sitting really good compared to uh, pre-crisis. So um, ARMs are another one, and ARMs have been more popular these past few years, with the rates being where they are. So I think that we should watch that because a lot of them are going to have a 2-year reset or a 3-year reset coming up fairly soon, depending on when they got them. If they were buying in, you know, 20, probably late 2022, more like 23 or 24, they probably, or they may have gotten an ARM, an adjustable rate mortgage. So we have to see where they adjust into. There hasn't been that much movement on the rates, so hopefully those people will be totally fine, and hopefully they're sitting in a good equity position as well. Um, so in 2026, roughly 21% of all mortgage originations were subprime, and adjustable rate mortgages made up 35 to 36% of new originations. Layer on the Alt-A loans, no documentation lending, negative amortization, the teaser rates, and you had a system engineered to produce defaults on a schedule. And that's what happened. I mean, we had just these chunks of loans resetting, and there was a high probability that most of those people were just going to go into default because they could hardly make the payment they were making, and what it was um, resetting into was completely unachievable for them. So today, subprime is estimated at about or below 5% of all new originations, and ARMs around 7 or 8%. More than 90% of the outstanding U.S. mortgage book is fixed rate, with the majority locked in during 2020 and 2022 at rates between 2.5 to 4. Uh, so there is no real reset risk like there was, coming out of 2006. Additionally, like I said, the ability to repay rule now requires lenders to verify income, assets, and employment. Qualified mortgage standard prohibits the negative amortization, balloons, and interest-only structures that defined that last crisis. So looking at the scorecard, crisis peak today, and what the verdict is for foreclosure filings, not even close. Foreclosure rate underwater, short sales. Um, you know, they're not even close to what the crisis peak was. Uh, Months of supply, we actually have the opposite. We are still in a housing shortage, even though we do see a lot more inventory on there right now. We're in a shortage, getting close to a balanced market right now. Subprime originations, ARMs, we're just not even anywhere close. Existing home sales, okay, now we're about even where the crisis was. Um, Existing home sales was sitting at about 4.19 million in 2010, and right now we're on about a 4 million pace, so we're actually a little below that. Um, so it feels a little the same if you've been in the business a while, but the factors that we're in right now are much different than what we had in, 28, uh, 2008 to about 2012 to 14, all that whole span right there. It took a long time to get out of that. So what's actually wrong? If your pipeline is a little dried up, existing home sales, if you're looking 2026 pace, yeah, we're at about 4 million. And the past, I think 3 years, we've been sitting at just over 4 million as it is. So it hasn't really gotten better. It's gotten a little worse actually, but not by a lot. But it has gotten a little worse. It has deteriorated a little bit. Um, yeah, the Dodd-Frank after 2008 required ability to repay. So we have a little bit of chat going on, and everybody that wants to pipe in. So every distress metric says we're nowhere near 2008, but transaction volume is sitting roughly the same level as the depths of the financial crisis. The existing home sale pace is just above 4 million, which is the lowest level since 1995. I was in high school in 1995, so I don't know what that really looked like. I know my parents were having a hard time, but I only know from 2003 on being in the real estate market that I can kind of relate to. So this is not a price problem at the moment. This is a volume problem. The distinction is everything for how you plan the rest of the year. So listings are not about to collapse in value. It's not pointing in that direction. Like I said, a lot of these people, unless there's just going to be a glut of distressed homes coming on the market, the current homeowner is sitting pretty well with their home if they bought anytime before 2021, or if they haven't taken out a bunch of equity with HELOCs and things like that. They should be sitting in a pretty good position. Um, there simply just aren't enough transactions happening to support the number of agents chasing them. In 2008, agents lost their businesses because the market fell apart. I can't tell you how many mortgage lenders and uh, brokers I saw go out of business within about 6 months. I mean, it was just nuts. I'm not seeing that today. In 2026, agents are losing their business share because the market stopped moving and agents haven't pivoted to keep the sales flowing. What do I mean by pivoting? Well, like I said, a couple months ago, working with investors, opening up a little bit more and focusing on people who are buying and selling right now. In some respects, the volume drought is harder to sit through than a crash because a crash resolves over time. Crash bottoms, it clears, it recovers on a visible schedule. A volume drought just grinds quarter after quarter with no obvious event to mark the turn. And that's probably when we will see the turn happen, is some sort of event happening. Otherwise, this is going to continue to just kind of drag on. What is that event? Well, it could be really anything geopolitically or nationally or anything like that. Could be as simple as the rates, getting under 6%. Under 6% mark seems to be the current magic number where buyers are like, okay, I'm going to jump in now, or that boosted my purchase power up just enough to get the home in this price range that I want. And I've seen that over and over again over the past couple of years with the higher rates. When we got close to that six, or even when we dipped under, we would see a little surge of buyers come in. So paying attention to the rates is pretty important. I don't think that is the end all event to get us out of this, drought that we're in, but it'll definitely help. So we just need to get to that. I've seen a lot of chatter about the agent exodus. I mean, that was like the other thing I was following. Oh, the housing market's going to crash, and then all these agents are going to leave the business. And it's not as bad as it's being told. I know we hire a lot of newly licensed agents here. It seems like a lot of agents are still, it almost seems like more getting their license than leaving the business, but that's hard for me to gauge. Um, so membership went for NAR went from a 2006 peak above 1.35 million down below 1 million by 2012. And I did remember seeing a whole lot of agents getting out of the business. Basically, we were just working with producers at that time. Um, so that was a decline of about 27% over 6 years. Today, membership peaked around 1.53 million in late 2024. And in August 2025, NAR's president said the association anticipated roughly 1.2 million members by the end of 2026 and adjusted its operating budget accordingly. But we are in June of 2026 and they are sitting at 1.44 million members. So some have lost, or some have gotten out of the business, but it's not at the pace that they were anticipating. Um, so the composition data tells us a more useful story. The typical NAR member now has 13 years of experience, up from 12 the prior year, and 75% say they are very certain they will remain active in real estate for the next 2 years, up slightly from 74%. People leaving are overwhelmingly new. NAR data shows agents with 2 years or less of experience earned a median of $8,100 in commissions in 2024 on a median of about three transactions closed. And this is nationally, this is National Association of Realtors. But the numbers don't change much as far as transaction count. Um, and that was with 0% of their business coming from repeat clients or referrals. So that was them not even really trying to work their sphere of influence. Um, so it isn't a market collapse driving people out. You can't live on $8,100 as an agent without a referral base and no cushion when the volume drops. So making that pivot if you've had a slow year, if it doesn't seem like it's starting to shape up a little bit, I would make the pivot into focusing on, again, investors and people who are in the market buying. That's what I did during the crisis is I shifted directly over to investors who were looking to buy up, essentially buy and hold property. It wasn't so much flipping. It was buy and hold property. They were trying to get a really low position on the house, buy as many as they could, and put renters in them. So where California sits, the statewide median price is about 904,000 as of June, down from a record 930,000. So it is down a little bit in May, but still up zero point 0.4 year over year. So prices are flat, but they're really not falling. And again, depending on the market, I see some of them going up. So I see some still selling over list price, or even right, where comp should be, maybe a little better. And I see some selling under, it just really depends on the region. Um, Affordability, 18%. So only about 1 in 5 California households can afford the median priced home. Um, so this is the actual constraint on volume is the affordability, which we hear from so much, which also is tied to the rates. That's why I say when we're watching rates, when we get to that 6%, that seems to be about that magic number. As soon as we dip below, 5.99 or something, um, people want to see that. Gets them out and thinking about it. Negative equity in most of California around 1% or lower versus 1.5 nationally. So we are not the epicenter of distress. Actually, Florida and Texas are. And that was actually similar in the crisis too. It was uh, Las Vegas, most of Nevada, and Florida. Those two were the worst that got hit. I think Texas was in there. There's a lot of other states too, but some of these regions were just so bad. And by that time, I was working in both markets, and the California market was not nearly as bad as the Nevada market. Um, Volume in 2025, sales ran 33% below 2019 in many areas, and one California analysis expects 2028 before a genuine recovery out of what is called the shadow real estate recession that began in 2022. So what just happened last week? The 30-year fixed averaged 6.65 for the week ending August 20, down from 6.67, barely. I mean, it's basically the same. A second consecutive weekly decline. We're talking the smallest declines ever. That small decline is more notable than it looks because it happened during a week when the 30-year Treasury yield hit its highest level since 2007, and the national debt crossed 40 trillion for the first time. And that's what all the news was last week. The Treasury's response was to at least double the size of its long-dated bond buybacks from 2 billion to at least 4 billion per operation, effective September 9th. Yields dropped hard on the announcement and then gave the entire move back within one day. Deutsche Bank characterized the intervention as a sign of administration unease and a soft form financial repression policy. There was talks that, hey, this is quantitative easing and this is that and this is that. JP Morgan said the interventions do nothing to address the underlying structural challenges. What this means for us, mortgage rates follow the 10-year treasury, and the force is pushing long end yields up. So that's a 40 trillion debt load, persistent deficits, and a war risk premium are all structural. So don't build a business plan around rates falling meaningfully this year. I know we all had a lot of hopes in the beginning of the year, and that seems like it's been pretty much wiped out. A lot of that stemming from the war in Iran, um, and that put, even more pressure on the housing market. Forecasters currently expect 30-year to hold in the low to mid 6 range through 2026, 2027. but this week demonstrated how fast that picture can move in either direction. So um, into 27, yeah, maybe. It would be great if they would dip below 6%, but we'll have to see what happens. Um, let's see, and check the chat real quick. Yeah, it'd be interesting to know how many of the current foreclosures are due to insurance costs pushing owners over their monthly affordable threshold. They may have qualified when the loan originated, but then the insurance spiked. I don't disagree with that. Insurance and taxes, that could be something that, we did an insurance one a few weeks back. What is it? I think just in the past 2 years, they've gone up 27% in premiums. Is that what causes, any sort of further slide in prices? Maybe if these people have to get out and they can't afford the home. So, um, and then Manny says it's also an income problem because the inflationary effect and lack of increased wages to keep pace. The affordability is lower now, around 19% of CA than in 2008. I agree. It was definitely more affordable in 2008 and beyond. Um, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go through this. We're kind of late, but I'm going to go through the short sales anyways if you want to hang around. So if you don't know what short sales are, if you haven't been in that market before, um, these are terrible. So no, some of them can go okay. And they did get better at them. During the crisis, it was complete. It was terrible. The business, the banks were busier than ever, losing money, so the staffing was terrible. Everything was just terrible with it. Um, so so more of you are going to encounter one if you haven't already, especially in the next, this year, next year. We're going to talk about what they actually are, how the process runs, and the single most important change to the rules that took effect this year. So what is a short sale? A short sale is where the property is worth less than the balance owed on the mortgage, and the lender agrees to accept less than full payoff to release the lien. It's not a foreclosure. The owner still owns the home and is the seller. The critical difference from a normal listing is that the seller cannot accept an offer on their own. The lender has to approve the price, the terms, and the seller's hardship. So while yes, you will have the seller sign an offer that comes through accepting it, essentially you can call it contingent upon the bank approving that price because the bank may not approve to sell it for that low. They're the ones taking the loss here. So they have the final say. Uh, who ends up in one right now? The profile is consistent. Buyers who purchase between 21 and 23, often with minimal down payments through FHA or VA programs, in markets that have since softened. They overpaid in a frenzy of multiple offers, waived appraisals, and they have almost no equity cushion. So when a job change happens, divorce, or a payment shock forces a move, Tim's point, like maybe insurance or something like that, could be as simple as insurance. Transaction costs approaching 10% push them underwater, even if the price held roughly flat. So geographically, this concentrates heavily in Florida and Texas. California is far less common, but it exists, especially in inland markets and among 2022 purchase vintage FHA borrowers. So if you really love to do short sales, that's your target audience right there. Um, Before you take a short sale listing, the Mortgage Forgiveness Debt Relief Act exclusion expired this year in January. So forgiven mortgage debt from a short sale or a deed in lieu may now be taxed as ordinary income unless the seller qualifies for an insolvency or bankruptcy exclusion. Your seller can complete a short sale and then receive a 1099 for money they never touched. And that was real big in the crisis too. That's what happened to many in the beginning before they finally um, the banks were agreeing. We had to negotiate that actually with a lot of the banks is to have it completely forgiven. And that's the difference, basically the loss amount that the bank took. So they owed, $500,000 on the mortgage and they sold the home for 450, and that was the best they can get. The bank would basically send them a 1099 for 50K so the bank could write off their loss. And then the homeowner just got a 1099 for 50K that now they have to deal with their taxes. So this changes the advice you're providing on selling short. For most of the last 2 decades, agents could tell a struggling seller that a short sale was the cleaner alternative to foreclosure and mostly leave it there. So it's no longer a safe guidance. Every short sale seller needs to talk to a CPA, a tax attorney, their tax preparer, whoever, about the forgiven debt consequence before they list, not after they close. And I would recommend putting that in writing, like in your listing agreement, just, hey, you're agreeing to go talk to your tax person about tax implications on this because I'm not going to provide advice on that, and you shouldn't either. I'm not a CPA, so I have no business telling people what their tax implications are going to be. So how the short sale process runs, you want to confirm that it's actually short. Sometimes you think it is and it's not, or vice versa. Get the payoff demand from the lender. The homeowner gets one, every month, at least in their account if it's electronic, and run a realistic net sheet, including all closing costs, unpaid property taxes, HOA arrears, and commissions. Sellers frequently believe they're underwater and they're not, or reverse. Establish a hardship. Lenders require documented hardship. So that's going to be a job loss, income reduction, divorce, medical event, death, relocation. A seller who simply wants out of a bad purchase generally does not qualify. So they need to prove a hardship to get this thing through. Assemble the lender package. This is kind of like applying for a home loan. So typically a hardship letter, 2 years of tax returns, recent pay stubs, and bank statements, a financial worksheet, a listing agreement, and a preliminary HUD-1 or estimated closing statement. Um, List and market it as a short sale. Disclose short sale status in the MLS. Price it against real comparables, not against the loan balance, because that's not going to matter. The loan balance is irrelevant to what the buyer will pay, and pricing to the payoff is the common mistake. So you want to price it with what homes are selling for. Submit the offer for the lender approval. This is where the timeline lives and dies. Expect 30 to 90 days for a single lender file and considerably longer when a second lien or mortgage insurance is involved. Months to process a short sale to the point of being approved is normal. So these do run longer. That is a question you want to ask the listing agent. If you are a buyer, if you're working with a buyer who wants to make an offer on one of these, ask, is this approved? How far into the process are you? Do you have contact with an asset manager? Find out the status of this thing. Do they have these things in place yet? Because if they do not have this and they have not established or even made contact with the bank yet, this thing is months down the road from getting approved. And that's, or the possibility of being approved. They've already been through that, and maybe they had a buyer, and by the time they got to the approval, the buyer walked, said, hey, this is taking too long, I don't want to do it. So now the home is back on the market as a short sale or an approved short sale. That's your best case scenario with this. Um, that is not going to take 90 days, most likely. It probably will still take more than 30, but it will be somewhat reasonable. Um, that's if you're on the buyer side. Manage the buyer's expectations relentlessly. Short sale buyers walk constantly because nobody told them how long it takes. Set the expectation at the offer in writing and repeat it. So yes, I do not recommend these for um, if you have a VA buyer or an FHA buyer. I talked about that previously too. Um, the reason why is because there are lender required repairs most of the time with those transactions. You're dealing with a seller who is in default or about to be in default, they don't have enough money to make their mortgage payments, or they've stopped making the mortgage payments, are they going to go and do a bunch of repairs on the home to satisfy appraisal conditions for the lender? Probably not. So I recommend not doing that. Not using, if you have a conventional buyer that's not going to have lender required um, appraisal requests, then that's your ideal buyer. Watch for the second lien, a HELOC, a second mortgage holder has to approve that too. And they often have little to lose by refusing. Second liens kill more short sales than any other single factor. So that's going to be, I have my first and no, yeah, I took out a line of credit. Well, that line of credit is going to be the worst to deal with if you're dealing with short sales. Because again, yeah, they don't have much to lose by saying, no, we're not going to do it. They want to be paid. They're in a second lien position or worse. So those are the ones that definitely make these more challenging. What to tell a seller about consequences? Credit. A short sale typically drops a credit score 100 to 150 points versus a foreclosure, which could be 100 to 300. Both stay on credit for 7 years. Um, Taxes, have the client speak to their tax preparer about their potential tax liabilities. This is a big variable. It's not your area to advise on. Deficiency, whether the lender can pursue. And this is actually pretty important too, because California does have anti-deficiency protections, just not for every single type of sale, like a short sale. So, um, alternatives to maybe note, loan modification, deed in lieu, or simply continuing to pay and waiting out the gap. For a seller who is only slightly underwater and not under a hard deadline, a year or two of payments plus modest appreciation often closes that gap without any of the above consequences. I saw a lot of people walk away from their homes because they lost 20% in equity, and they just said, they called it a strategic default. They just were upset that they lost 20%. They didn't think they were ever going to get it back, and they walked away from their homes. And let me tell you, a lot of them actually regretted it afterwards. If they would have just stuck around and made their payments, which they could, a lot of them could. Um, yeah, yeah, geez. So let's run through real quick and then we can wrap up. Sorry for running late. The core anti-deficiency protections for Californians. So number one, purchase money loans are non-recourse. So a purchase money loan in California is non-recourse from the moment it is originated with no personal liability for default. This covers seller carryback financing on any real property, loans on a dwelling of not more than four families used to pay all or part of the purchase price, where the property is occupied entirely or in part by the purchaser. Junior loans are the seconds, taken out at the same time as a senior loan and used as purchase to purchase the property. So that's a purchase money second loan. So what is that? Have you ever heard of that? That's going to be maybe they got a first loan for 80%, and then they also used a second loan to cover maybe 15 or 10%. So it was an 80-10 or an 80-15 combo. So one is a first, the 80% loan is in a first lien position. The 10 or 15% second is in a second lien position. Both were used to purchase the house. So it was a purchase money second. Uh, Key features cannot be waived either at the time the loan is made or later. Applies to short sales, not just foreclosures. Refinances of a purchase money loan retain protection, except as to any new advance of principal not applied to the original loan or the costs of the refinance. Payments of principal are deemed applied first to the purchase money balance, then to the new advance. Cash out refinancing doesn't automatically destroy the protection, but the cash out portion can be subject to a deficiency judgment. So if they took out 30 grand in equity, that would be the part on a cash out refi, that would be the part that would be subject to the deficiency judgment. No deficiency after a trustee sale prohibits a lender from pursuing a deficiency judgment after that lender forecloses non-judicially on its own loan. This was amended January 1st, 2014 to state expressly that following a non-judicial foreclosure, no deficiency shall be allowed or collected on any note secured by a deed of trust. Applies regardless of whether the loan was purchase money or not. Since overwhelmingly majority of California foreclosures are non-judicial, this is the practical backstop for most borrowers. Um, Note on the limit, it protects against the foreclosing lender only. A wiped out second lien holder who didn't foreclose isn't covered. Um, no deficiency after an approved short sale. So no deficiency shall be allowed, or sorry, owed or collected on a note secured solely by a deed of trust or mortgage for a dwelling of not more than 4 units, where the owner sells for less than the balance owed with the written consent of the lien holder. So this is the short sale. Provided title has been voluntarily transferred by recorded grant deed and the sale proceeds have been tendered to the lender. Covers both first and junior trust deeds, applies whether the loan was purchase money or a refinance, uh, as as long as the lender consents to the short sale. Franchise Tax Board has stated a California taxpayer would not have cancellation of indebtedness income where taxpayer was involved in a short sale. This is relevant given the federal exclusion just expired. So that's the federal one. California still has the protections, though this is a state level position. It doesn't resolve federal treatment. Um, One action rule and fair value requires a lender to exhaust the security before going after the borrower personally. So if a lender pursues a judicial foreclosure, California law requires a fair value hearing where borrowers can present evidence the property was worth more than the foreclosure sale price, reducing or eliminating any of the deficiency. So exceptions that apply across the board, fraud. The lender can sue for fraud in persuading the lender to make the loan in the first instance. A misrepresentation and a short sale request can support damages, a damages suit regardless of the anti-deficiency protection. Waste, the lender can sue for bad faith, waste, or damage to the property. Entity borrowers, uh, does not apply if the homeowner is a corporation, LLC, limited partnership, or political subdivision. So you have to be mindful of that when you look at who's on title. Property type, only 1 to 4 units, not 5+ units, commercial or vacant land. Cross collateralization loans fall outside of the protections. New advances on refi loss protection per the statute above. Deeds in lieu aren't covered by specific anti-deficiency statute. Liability is usually waived, but the release should be documented in writing. So get it in the agreement, don't assume it if you're doing a deed in lieu of foreclosure. So in short, most California homeowners selling a 1 to 4 unit residential and an approved short sale are protected, and someone who bought with purchase money loan and never refinanced is protected regardless. The people who fall through are entity held title, 5+ units or commercial, cash out refinance borrowers on the cash out portion, and anyone who misrepresented something. Um, so we'd probably go ahead and, I guess wrap up. If you think one of these is going to be too much for you, refer it out to somebody who does short sales. There's also short sale negotiators out there. Starting to see them come back around. They're dusting off their hats and getting back in the business, I guess, if you want to call it that. And again, it's not like we have droves of these things coming in, but we are starting to see a few more. So feel free to give me a call. I do not negotiate short sales. That is far too time consuming. I would personally turn that over. Essentially, it'd be like, you know, a transaction coordinator or a loan processor. You have this person who specializes in doing this thing, which is negotiating the short sales, and that is giving them documentation, following up with the asset manager, doing all these things to push the short sale through the pipeline at the lender or at the servicer. So that's what they do. They usually charge about 1%. So if you are taking one of these, I would highly recommend, you know, don't ask for a reduced commission because the bank is going to be, you know, paying your compensation as part of the agreement. So these things are time consuming, they're frustrating. Don't take these for little or no compensation. It is 100% not going to be worth your time. So the bank does pay the compensation on these. So just keep that in mind. Um, but yeah, if you have any questions on it, feel free to give me a call. I can hopefully help you get one started or get you pointed in the right direction. We do have a short sale negotiator. Well, he used to do a lot of speaking and stuff, and obviously that market went away. But he is starting to take these again. He is a licensee here. So if you want contact for somebody who does do these, just let me know and I can pass you that contact. That's about what I have for today. Looks like Manny had a question. Do you have to be licensed to negotiate short sales? Not listing the home, but negotiating short sale. I'm not 100% actually. I don't remember. I wanted to look that up because I had a feeling that that question was going to come up, and I forgot to look at that potentially. So let me double check that. The person that we have here is licensed, so that's going to be your best case scenario. Well, you don't really even need a certificate, Eric. I mean, that's good because it means you went through training, but I mean, I think you can just basically call up and start negotiating. As long as the homeowner gives you permission to speak to on their behalf, then you should be fine. So the certificate is like, hey, I'm trying to get this business and I went through these classes and we all had our little designations back then. I think it was what CDPE or something was the one from back in the day that was so big on short sales. So everybody was getting their CDPE designation uh, so that they can get listings. Yeah, I think that's right, Rachel. Rachel, you don't have to. So yeah, homeowner to give you written authorization. Yeah, I don't actually think you do. I wanted to verify before we came on, but I don't think anything's been passed or anything like that where you have to be licensed. So you just have to be good at it. So um, all right, well, that's what I have for today. Um, sorry it got cut out and sorry we ran a little long, but next week we do have Jeff Lobb coming on, his coach, and that should be a good one. And then the week after that, we will be taking off for Labor Day weekend. So, any questions? Let me know. Thanks for coming on, and we will talk to you later.